I do not want to go too much into the subject of the Dutch minhag of Cholov Stam and Cholov Yisrael, but just to see what the discussion is, and then we will continue to practical things in the milk industry. First, we have to know that milk of kosher behemoths, cows, sheep, and goats, or any other kosher animal, the milk is kosher. So also from deer and also from, I don't know what, all other types of kosher animals, even giraffes. Milk is kosher. But milk from non-kosher animals, if the animal is not kosher, then the milk is not kosher. There's only one exception, because we have a rule that every rule must have an exception. So this rule also has an exception. There's one exception. Human milk. Babies are allowed to drink human milk, even though you are not allowed to eat human people. Cannibalism is not allowed on Torah, but milk is permitted for babies. Anyway, but let's not go into that subject. So, milk of non-kosher animals is not kosher. In the Middle East, where I am now in Israel, in Saudi Arabia, in Somalia, you name them, Africa, Asia, up to Mongolia, and not even further, where they have lots of camels, it is normal and usual to drink camel milk. And there was a lot of problems in the times of Chazal that there was mixtures. People would mix camel milk, other horse milk with regular milk. So in the times of the Mishnah, the Chazal made a decree that you're only allowed to drink milk supervised from the stable, from the stall. It has to have supervision. The question is, in a country like Europe, where it is unlikely, the last time I saw a camel walking down the street in Amsterdam, I don't remember. No camels. Horses, yes, but camels are not there. So the question is, and according to law, milk is only cow's milk. Nothing else is allowed to be called milk. Can one rely on the government? Can one rely on normal practice or not? The Pri Chadash brings that the Dutch, he brings from Holland, that in Holland there are no one milks horses in Holland, and therefore the minhag was to permit milk not supervised. Reb Moshe Feinstein nowadays is not alive anymore, but for our present generations, he was the leading posek who in America also said that you can rely on the local authorities, and it is as if it is supervised, and he permitted regular milk supervised by the government, not by a rabbi, and he considered it as Cholov Yisrael, not Cholov Yisrael, but as kosher. That's about the discussion. I do not want to go into it too much. Till now, Klal Yisrael is very split on this. The majority of Haredish places, there is a possibility of having Cholov Yisrael. People living in the wide world, far off of Haredi communities, have more difficulty with this, and they rely on the Psak of Rav Moshe Feinstein and the Pri Chodosh. I'll just tell you something, a very interesting anecdote that I personally had. Not only I had a lot of siyata d'shmaya, I must tell you this. I was once traveling. Part of my job is sitting many hours on planes. So I had the zchus to be sitting on a Swiss plane. And of course, I also learned, but some of the time I went through the flight magazine. And then in the flight magazine, I saw an article where Swiss were a whole article that in Switzerland, the Swiss does chesed. What chesed does Swiss do? Swiss bring milk from camel milk from Somalia, and they bring it free of charge to Switzerland. And in Switzerland, they make from the milk powder, and the Swiss transports the milk powder free of charge back to Somalia because it was hunger. Very interesting. I said that I don't remember seeing camels in Holland. I don't even remember seeing camels in Switzerland. But camel milk seems to be, Swiss brings camel milk to Switzerland. Okay, what's the difference? A few weeks later, I went to give kashrut to a company that does spray-dried milk. I don't know if you can even imagine what a spray dryer looks like. A spray dryer is not a little tiny machine. It is a tower, to 10, 15 meters high at least, and sometimes 20 meters high, very, very high. And the whole thing gets very, very hot. And at the top, there's a little doozer, a little nozzle that sprays in the milk, a spray, and because it's hot, the droplets of milk dry, and by the time they fall 20 meters, it becomes a powder. Now you can imagine if we would have to kasher such a spray tower, we can't fill it up with water. 20 meters high and 5 meters in diameter, you can't fill it with water. So it's not easy to kasher. So there's a big difference if the isur on it is treifus. For example, if they're making soup powder out of pig soup, then it's very difficult to kasher. If it is only chalav, no, only chalav, we can find a way to kasher. So I'll go to the factory and I discuss them. Yeah, oh, we are pure milk company, nothing. No soup powder. No, we don't do any soup powders. Do you have gelatine? No, no gelatine. There's another thing that many milk factories have something which is called calf feed, milk powder for baby calves. But when they make milk powder for baby calves, they want the calves to have a lot of calories. They mix in fat into the milk. So they treifen the fat. So they mix fat into the milk, make milk powder, and they put this into the food to make the calves fat. So kelbe milk. So I asked him, do you produce kelbe milk? No, no, never. Oh, no, only milk. So then all of a sudden I remember this story with Swiss. So I tell him, do you maybe by any chance do camel milk? Oh, yes, camel milk. We do a special production for Somalia, free of charge. Thank you very much. Camel milk is drive, and I can't kasher your spray tower after camel milk. So we had to work hard how to manage to give a hechsher to that company. It wasn't easy. But anyway, so that's just a story that I happened to have camel milk in Switzerland. Anyway, so let's go back to our normal milk. So after we've decided that milk is milk, geschaumete milk, not geschaumete milk, but milk is milk. Milk comes out of cows. When I send a mashgiach to a stable to check the milk, or even someone who drinks normal, regular milk, needs some sort of rabbinical check to make sure that even the regular milk needs some sort of hechsher. It must be on the kosher list. Let me explain why. Number one, typhus. Meaning, if you would find a cow with 3 legs, had a car accident, and one leg was chopped off, so it's walking with crooked, the poor cow. So a cow with 3 legs is not kosher. If you would shecht it, the meat is not kosher. It's treif. What about the milk from a treif in a cow? Is the milk from a treif in a cow kosher or not kosher? The halacha is very clear that the milk from a treif in a cow is not kosher. But the big but is there any reason to believe you're going to meet a 3-legged cow in your stable? Yeah, unlikely. Sometimes with an ear bitten off by the farmer's dog, that can happen. But legs, usually they have 4 legs. But there are two main problems that quite a high percentage of this problem happens by cows. Number one, Caesareans. Caesarean, that they take out the calf with the operation. This operation can be done in a way that it is kosher. In Eretz Yisrael, for example, they have mashgichim who are trained with the vets, and they go to every time the veterinarian goes to the stable, a mashgiach goes with, and they are trained to work together to make sure that the way he cuts, he does not make the animal treif. But in Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Holland, a cow can't give milk before it gives birth. It needs to give birth. And if there are problems, they're going to have to operate. They call the veterinarian to make something. And he is not a trained mashgiach, he's not a trained rabbi. And very possibly, he cuts open the belly of the cow, takes out the baby. And if the length of the cut is too large, I'm not going into that halacha now. If the length of the cut is too large, the cow becomes treif. Every mashgiach can see, is trained to see. You can see the scar on the belly of the cow. You can see a scar, and you know that behemoth is a treif in the behemoth. But there is another thing that happens very, very often. The cows eat grass. And it can have, in this winter, grass, the summer, in the winter they sit in the stables, they get more hay, other food. Anyway, but they have to eat. It happens sometimes that the stomach gets bloated with air. It blows up. Human beings, when they get bloated with air, they can know how to bring it up. Little babies, the mommy has to help them, pat them on the back. Adults know how to bloat off air. But the cows sometimes get stuck inside air in the stomach, gases. And the stomach starts blowing up. And it's extremely painful for the cow. And the cow can die. Another thing what happens is if it starts getting bloated, it can twist. And if it twists, it knicks off and it can die. The farmers can take a needle with a hole inside, prick straight into the stomach, and the air goes out. But a hole in the stomach makes the behemoth thrive. It happens quite a lot. Then there's another procedure that the veterinarian does. He doesn't want it to happen again. So he sews the stomach, he makes a hole with his needle, sews the stomach in a position that it's easy for the air to escape. And again, sewing with a needle into the stomach makes a hole in the stomach, and the hole in the stomach makes the behemoth thrive. A Panzenschnitt, it is called. Again, this, a trained mashgiach can see on the side of the animal a little tiny cut. Baruch Hashem, the local law is that if you do this procedure on an animal, it has to sit 2 full weeks, not quarantine, but it has to have 2 full weeks antibiotics. Give antibiotics to the animal. Milk of an animal taking antibiotics may not go into the system. You're not allowed to give milk, use milk from a cow that is taking antibiotic, because they will then find in the milk little small amounts of antibiotic. Human beings later drink that milk and they become resistant for this antibiotic. It's very not healthy. And therefore, the farmers don't take this milk, so they have such a quarantine for cows that have had operations. So a mashgiach, when he walks into a stable and sees one cow in the corner, straight to ask the farmer, what happened to that cow? Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. That behemoth is a treif. You mark down the ear as a number. That animal may not be milked. I remember many years ago, I started a company in Switzerland. We were milking, and the mashgiach noticed that a cow is a treif and a cow. And we told the farmer, that milk you may not use. You cannot use that milk in there. What should I do? At the end, the Rav who was giving the hechsher on that milk bought the cow, paid him, not a money, bought the cow, and they sold it to the other end of Switzerland somewhere. And like that, they were sure that this animal is not causing a problem for kashrut. In Holland, I was once in a large farm in Holland, and I asked the farmer, do you have ever problems with Caesareans and with bloated stomach? No. Do we know? Never happened. No. We know. In Switzerland, I know it happens. The Swiss, they love their cows. Every cow has got his name, Pinky and Perky, and therefore it's part of a family. For a family, you give antibiotics. I have 1,000 cows, and if one has a problem, straight to the butcher. I don't have any time for that. Go straight to the butcher. But at least the rabbinat and have a little bit of contact with these farms, and they know if such things would happen or would not happen. It is checked. These are just the small problems that happen by regular cow's milk or by gesheimete milk. The mashgiach notices, he's trained to look at the belly of the cow, the sides, to see if they have any questions, any scars, and if yes, the milk can't be used. Once the milk arrives in a factory, that's the next step. Milk arrives in a factory. Nowadays, or most of the people listening to this shiur will still remember the real milk in bottles. And then every morning, after one day, you had nice cream at the top. When you could put that cream on the strawberries, that was so good. But nowadays, it's all homogenized, pasteurized, and milk. They call it milk. But anyway, that's what we've got nowadays. We can't change that. So we'll stick to that milk. So milk comes from factories. And as I said, or they take off the fat. And the fat, they make butter. But all milk is pasteurized. Pasteurized means it's cooked. All milk nowadays is fast cooked. Pasteurized means in seconds, in split seconds, really, the milk goes from 4 degrees. It's in refrigeration at 4 degrees, and in seconds, it becomes hot till 80 degrees, and seconds later, it's back cold. They cool it down very, very fast. So it heats very fast, cools very fast, and that kills all the bacteria. And that's why it can last in your home 1 week, even 2 weeks, the milk can last before going sour, because all the bacteria are killed. Now, that in itself doesn't make big problems. Milk. If it's Chalav Yisrael, we do a kashering beforehand. Regular milk from the shops isn't kashered beforehand. But here again, a mashkiach must have some contact. I'll tell you a very interesting thing. 30, 40 years ago, there was no such thing as apple juice in cartons, grape juice in cartons, orange juices in cartons. It's a relative new thing. When this started coming onto the market, who had the know-how to put liquids pasteurized in cartons? The first companies to do this were the milk companies. The milk companies, until present, the most modern equipment for filling liquid pasteurized into cartons is milk. Milk companies only or nearly only work in the mornings, because you milk the cows in the morning, the evening, the delivery of the milk is in the middle of the night, and the production starts in the morning. That's the usual daily routine in milk companies. So very often, milk companies in the afternoon have no work. Machines are expensive and time is money. So you find what you can do to fill the capacity of your machines. Many milk companies fill, till present, iced tea or fruit juices. They eat nothing, it doesn't take time. All they have to do, pasteurize the fruit juice. I'll explain a little bit more. Oranges don't grow in Holland and Germany, and none of these things, most of these fruit juices are bought a concentrate. They mix it with water, add in sometimes a bit of sugar, mix it, pasteurize it, and fill it into the cartons. So all these things go through the pasteurizing machines. No, what's the problem? Aha, grape juice is a problem. And many fruit juices also have in their line grape juice. Or multi-fruit juices, fruit juice mixes with traumasap. So grape juice goes also in the line of fruit juice. And if in this pasteurizing equipment they do grape juice, then your milk might become treif and would need to have kashering afterwards. So it is again something that whoever permits this milk, whether it's a hechsher or a list, they take into account to check, is the equipment used for other products or not? Another interesting thing that happens, additive, adding in other ingredients in milk. No one would expect milk. Milk is milk. I also thought always milk is milk. A couple of years ago, I noticed there was no, even till present here in Israel, there is the kashrut for Pesach for 1% milk is never mahadrin. Interesting. You have mahadrin 3% milk, 3% fat milk, which is the regular milk. But the 1% fat milk, the low-fat milk, is never in Israel kosher mahadrin. Now that's funny. Why? Do the cows don't eat kneidlich they eat gebroks in Pesach or what? Why should there be no mahadrin one low-fat milk? So I started investigating. What's the problem? And I found out then that the law is, since the vitamina are fat soluble, meaning they combine with the fat. Many of the vitamins of the milk combine with fat. So if you take off the fat, you also take off much of the vitamins. So according to law, you have to add back into the milk some of the vitamins that you've taken off when you take out the fat. So half fat milk is taken off 1.5% of the fat, but you have removed more than 1.5% of the vitamins, nearly 100% of the vitamins. So they add back vitamins. And those vitamins need kashrut to be kosher at Pesach. But these vitamins also have to be kosher. Sometimes it could be questionable. I don't know exactly why, but on the ingredients of milk, you never see the words with added vitamins, because they're not adding more vitamins than the milk needs. It's back to the natural standard of vitamins in the milk. They don't need to write it onto the packaging, which is interesting, but that's a fact. In Spain, if you buy milk, it can have omega-3 in it. I've myself seen companies that add fish oil into milk. They homogenize it well, and it doesn't smell of fish, but they add in fish oil into the milk. Unbelievable. But there it does say on the milk, enriched with in omega-3. But anyway, there are additives that are sometimes added to milk to make the milk more healthy. So it is a point that needs to be taken into consideration I'm not saying whether it's kosher or non-kosher, but it's a point that needs to be thought about when you buy milk or when you're going to a stable, when you whatever. It's interesting to know about these additives that are added in. So far to plain milk. Plain milk. But the majority of milk nowadays doesn't end up as drinking milk. The majority of milk goes to milk products. Yogurts, soft cheeses, hard cheeses, that's the majority. There is a completely different story than plain milk. That's already a sophisticated factories with lots of different ingredients and lots of different questions. Let's take the simple ones. Yogurt is a relative simple product. In fact, it's not plain sour milk, but yogurt is milk with added bacteria, sour milk bacteria. But these bacteria are not natural in the air. Of course, everyone understands that these bacteria are bought in factories that produce bacteria. I personally have visited many such factories. It's extremely interesting because you see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you in the nature. It is so interesting under the microscope to see the different bacteria, and every family of bacteria gives you different taste. So the different types of yogurt, the Greek yogurt and the Israeli Leben yogurt and the European yogurts have got different tastes. The plain white yogurt is a different taste. And because there are tiny little differences in the type of bacteria used, and the different bacteria gives you a different yogurt. These bacteria are grown in factories. What is interesting, these bacteria live. They're not living in the sense of that they're animals, but they are living bacteria, and you have to feed them. And when you feed these bacteria, they multiply thousands and millions of times. They multiply. So you take one droplet of a bacteria, you give it enough proteins, and you give it some carbons, some sugars, and some flour to eat, some yeasts, and they start growing, multiplying, and you can see it multiplying. Sometimes, I've personally seen this many times, the proteins are meat extracts. Meat extract is a protein. And many times they feed the bacteria with meat extract. It's intended for the milk industry, but it is improper treif. It can be. There are nowadays many large factories that have hechsher, that do kosher, and there they use protein, milk protein, soy protein, or other types of protein, fish even protein I've seen, but we're careful not to use meat protein. But it needs a hechsher. So even someone who is not drinking Chalav Yisrael, has to check on the list which yogurt from which factory may be used, because you cannot say all yogurt are okay, because yogurt is a product that can be problematic, even a plain white yogurt without any added sugars and fruits, etc. When you start off with the sweet yogurts, the yogurts that have fruit in it, that is already a separate issue, because these fruits, it's not a little farmer cutting in a few strawberries and mixing them in. They buy tons of a finished fruit preparation, which large factories produce strawberries and peaches and apricots and apples and grape and many other things on the same lines. And so there, again, you have to check the factory. What are they producing? Are they not producing treif? The factories under my hechsher, where I go, they have tried many times to produce meat on the same lines, and we've stopped them. Baruch Hashem, we managed to stop them. But it can happen. So, fruit preparation. Many of the fruit preparation have got gelatina inside as a thickener, to make it a little bit thicker. Gelatine, it will say on the yogurt, maybe will say on it gelatina, but you see many times gelatine, and gelatine is, as we mentioned in the previous year, produced from animals, which is not very kosher. We can have kosher, but the gelatine usually is not very kosher. And then there is the issue of flavorings, complex flavorings. Nowadays they love to call it nature flavorings. Of course, nature, because it looks red like strawberries, it smells like strawberries, and it tastes like strawberries, so it's nature identisch. That's the trick nowadays. It makes the people more happy with, because the name nature on it. But I'm sure you wouldn't be able to guess how many ingredients go into a plain strawberry flavoring. More than 10 and more than 20, sometimes up to 50 ingredients to make one little strawberry flavoring. 50 ingredients. And when a Rav goes to give a hechsher on a flavoring company, he has to check all these 50 ingredients. And many of them need changing because they came from non-kosher places, non-kosher ingredients. So flavorings is an issue in all these fruit preparation. You will always see it says the word flavorings on them, and if it has flavorings, it needs checking. That is the issues that you would find in a plain yogurt. White yogurt, fruit yogurt, you have the fruit, the gelatina, and the flavorings. Let's have a look a little bit at cheese. In Holland, why not cheese? Cheese is the most important. Not the last, should be the first. But we can't have cheese without doing milk first. So we check the milk.
I would like to make a remark. I think that for non-kosher animals, you can't make cheese, no?
Yes, very possible. Although thank you for your ha'orah. You are right according to the Gemara. The Gemara says, I'm answering this question. The Gemara says that cheese cannot be produced from non-kosher milk, meaning that if you have kosher milk, cow's milk, and usually you couldn't drink it because maybe someone has mixed in some non-kosher milk, camel milk or horse milk, but you can't make a cheese from a mixture of cow's milk and camel's milk. That is correct. The Gemara in Avodah Zorah. After I had the story that I mentioned above about the camel milk of Somalia, and I had met this one factory producing milk powder from camel's milk, I started asking around what else happens with this camel milk. And I found a whole industry that produced cheese from horse milk and from camel milk. And I was very bothered because I know that the Gemara never makes a mistake. And if the Gemara says we can't, how can the Swiss say we can? And I went really in depth to find out more about it. And I found out that the difference is complete different temperature range, cow's milk and camels and horses' milk. Therefore, you cannot mix the two. If you have cow's milk and you mix into it camel's milk, it won't work because the cheese-making process of camel's milk is at a much higher temperature than the production of cow's milk, and the same horse milk. And that's why the Gemara is right. There's no chashash that one mixes in horse milk or camel's milk into cow's milk. But in itself, cow's milk, horse milk, and camel's milk can be made into cheese. I know in Holland, near the German border, there is a large factory that makes horse milk products, cheese, and yogurt from horse milk. It's a special product, special temperatures, etc. But they do it. In Germany, there's quite a lot of it, but I know also in Holland. Anyway, so we've got our cow's milk without horses in it, without any camels in it. There are still a lot of halachic problems in cheese. Let me first go to the hard cheeses, to the proper cheese, not cream cheese. That's not cheese. Cheese, cars. In order to make cheese, in the early years, in the time of the Gemara, you would take a large vat of milk, a big keli full of milk, and you would throw in the stomach of a calf. Stomach of a calf. Yes. Those of you who have seen babies drinking milk, when a baby drinks milk and he sicks it out, about 3 minutes later, or 5 minutes later, it comes out as cheese. Very fast. At home, when you want to make cream cheese, it takes 24 hours waiting till it goes sour, and then you hang it up in your socks and you can have a nice ball of cream cheese. But a baby drinks milk and sicks, vomits. 3 minutes later, 5 minutes later, cream cheese. How does that work? Because the stomach acids are very strong acids. And they have a very strong enzyme in the stomach. Human stomachs have a very strong enzyme that breaks down milk very, very fast. 5 minutes after drinking a glass of milk, a bottle of milk, that milk is cheese. Very fast. And the calves are the same. When they drink cow's milk, in their stomach, the stomach enzymes change the milk to cheese very fast. So if you take out the stomach of a calf and you have a big vat with 20 tons of milk and you pour in a few spoons of minced up stomach, within a few minutes, the cheese starts going sour. The milk starts going sour and becomes cheese very, very fast. And that's called in English rennet. Rennet. And question, can cheese produced with non-kosher calf stomachs be kosher? No, it cannot be kosher. But Baruch Hashem, in the last years, the Rambam already brings it, but it wasn't in factory style. There is a possibility called microbiological rennet. So there's a possibility to have the same enzyme, but not produced from cows, that is kosher. But normal cheese, without any hashkacha at all, in Holland, normal cheese in Holland, without any rabbinical checking, is very possibly, or even more than very possibly, most probably, has in it rennet, which is animal rennet. An animal rennet cannot be used, may not be used. Now, even though the company is going to be using microbiological rennet, according to the halacha, there is a halacha called Gibun Yisrael, that even though the milk is not shomed milk, in order that the cheese should be a kosher cheese, you need a mashkiach, a Yiddish person, to pour in this rennet to cause it to become cheese. Gibun means like gwina, gwina means cheese. So Gibun Yisrael, meaning a Yid is making the cheese into a cheese. And that is many of the cheeses which are not Cholov Yisrael, but they still have a kosher stamp on it. They still need a kosher stamp of the Rabbinat, Mishas Asir. So from production, it is geshoymet. There's a shoymer from production because the mashkiach, the shoymer, knows he has to check, number one, to make sure that the rennet being used is a kosher rennet, not an animal rennet, and mashkiach pours in or fills the machine. Nowadays, I don't stand there pouring in bottles of things. It all works with machines. So you have a mashkiach pouring into the machine and loading the machine, etc., to make sure that it is Gibun Yisrael. There are many ingredients, other ingredients that go into cheese. Also bacteria, yogurt bacteria also go into the cheese. Some of them have colorings added. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever noticed the plain Dutch butter, Belgian butter, English butter, has got a different color in the summer and in the winter. Yeah. Sometimes it's more yellow, sometimes it's more white. The color changes depending on the weather. Because the food of the cow changes the color of the cream. When he eats nice fresh grass, green grass, the fat is yellow. And when he eats fodder, he eats hay and other food in the stables, the milk is more white and the butter is white. But then the cheese is also more white. And we don't like cheese that is white. Cheese has to be nice yellow. So you help it. You put in a little bit. Help the nature have the color. So colorings are added in. Salts are added in. But these are usually not an issue in kashrus. Usually. But then after the milk has gone sour and they do separate between the milk and the whey. The whey is the whey, I think it's called. That's the liquid. Whey. Yeah, that's the liquid of the milk. The water is separated. It is then pressed into a form. And then they send it swimming in a salt bath. A salt bath. Some of them go swimming for 1 day, sometimes 2 or 3 days, swimming in a salt bath. Very big baths. Much, much bigger than the mikveh. Very big baths. And very, very smelly. Oh, yes. Some of these salt baths in these factories haven't been changed for years. Years. And the process, it's yellow, green, the water, full of lactose and cheese, etc. Salty, heavy salty. But that gives a good taste to the milk, the smell and the taste to the cheese. The problem is, what else has been swimming in that swimming bath? If they do produce also non-kosher cheeses in the same factory, then you have to make sure you have to have your own salt bath, because you cannot use the same salt bath for kosher cheeses as for non-kosher cheeses. And that is not a simple task. It is not easy to change a salt bath. So, but again, all these factories that are producing kosher cheeses, of course, the Rabbinat and the Mashgichem, they make sure that they have a special bath only for kosher cheeses. I did mention short the whey. Whey. I mentioned in the previous year, nothing gets thrown away ever. No one throws anything away. The water from this cheese is quite expensive because lots of minerals in this water and sugar. Milk sugar is in this water. Whey. And that is one of the other issues that I will not have time to see anymore this year. For example, lactose. There are people who know lactose because they have the intolerance. Lactose intolerance. They can't digest lactose. But many medicines, tablets, medicines, and even cakes and puddings, you will read in the ingredients, or it's called milk sugar. Oh, that's nice. It's much a nicer name, milk sugar. Or plain commercial name, lactose. These, all the way of all factories is sold to one big factory that collects whey from different factories. Now, if you have one of these factories that makes cheese with animal rennet, what halacha does the water of this cheese have? The water of this cheese is also not in ganzen kosher. I don't want to use the word treif because there's a lot of poskim discussions whether the water is also considered treif or not, etc., etc. It's too long discussion, and I'm much too small to mix into such a discussion. And therefore, if you see it in your medicine, ask the Rav whether you can use it or not. But I'm just telling you the facts, the plain and simple facts, that lactose or milk sugar is produced from whey powders, whey, and whey is the water coming off the cheeses. And therefore, there's a lot of investigation to check out behind a little spoonful of lactose.
That's why one was not allowed to drink the Rivella from the Friese Vlag.
That's right. Rivella used to have lactose. That's right. Many lactose is a very common
Whey, not lactose.
Whey. Yeah, but lactose is a very common sweetener. Very, very common. It's less. It's healthier than sugar, maybe, but I don't want to go into that. I think that my time is coming to an end. It's 15
minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Good.
3 minutes. Okay.
You give me 1 minute of the next year already.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your time is coming to an end. Chas v'cholila. Yeah.
Chas
No. Time to speak this time.
Let's go back to the cheese. Let's go back to our cheese. Much of this cheese has another process. For example, it is sent to factories for slicing. Nothing, just slicing. But the slicing factories, there are factories that are specialized in cutting cheese. A few weeks ago, just before this corona started, I was in Italy in a factory that cuts salami. And there I saw on the same line, salami and cheese. What's the difference? Cutting is cutting. I went to see the possibility of cutting salami, hard salamis. But just as I came there, we were still cutting cheese. So plain sliced cheese, where was it sliced? It can be another issue. Us Yidden are always finding problems. Such a simple product as a sliced cheese, we've managed to find so many problems. Again, it is clean, it is cold, it is a cold process, but not always cold. Because after slicing, it is put into plastic bags and is vacuum packed. And then it is shrinked. When you see a vacuum pack, it's many times dipped into boiling water to shrink the plastic. And there, if they've also shrinked some salami chips, you have a problem. So therefore, whenever you buy something, make sure that it has a hechsher, it has a rabbinat, is on the list, because if not, you're going to have problems. Even if the cheese was kosher, produced in a kosher, but maybe it was sliced somewhere not kosher, check, make sure that you're buying, you know what you're buying, and it is on the list, or it has the hechsher printed on it. And if not, be careful. Okay, we'll stop here. Happy Shavuos. I wish you lots of simcha and kol tov.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Ralph, thank you very much. Good Yom Tov.
I hope so till next time. We be in contact.
Okay, bye. Kol tov.
Bye.
Lovely
Yom Tov. Is die van zondag?
Shkoyach, sir.
Yeah. Bye, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Goed, we wachten even op Rabijn Stiefel. Ik zie hem nog niet.
We wachten even voor Rabijn Stiefel.
maar-
Rabijn Stiefel, ben je hier al?
Hij is er al.
Oh,
Skoja Graf Padwa.
Bye.
Oké. Nou, goedemorgen iedereen. Zullen wij meteen beginnen? Of wil je 2 minuten wachten voor mensen? Of,
nee hoor, begin maar. Ik ben netjes aangekleed voor vandaag.
Wat?
Niks.
Nog een keer goedemorgen.
Goedemorgen, Gabriel. Oké.
Nee hoor, begin maar.
Dan gaan we beginnen. Goedemorgen iedereen.